Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be giving this presentation to you guys about how to boost revenue and productivity with time tracking. So this is a trick I kind of use anytime my regular to-do list changes or my regular schedule changes. And what I mean by that is that I work pretty hard to put as much as possible on autopilot. But as we all know, in business, there's going to be twists and turns all the time. And that can always throw autopilot off, right? So the first thing time tracking can help you figure out is whether or not you're working for free. I know that might sound silly, but entrepreneurs at really all levels do this actually. And I actually recently had an experience where I flagged this with somebody I was working with, and somehow he did not see until I actually said, all right, well, I guess if you want to work for free, how much is your time worth again? Like if somebody were to book an hour of your time, what would that cost them? And his response at first was just totally shocked. And then second, he was pretty thankful because he realized that I was right? So now he's not a solopreneur, but if you are, this difference between revenue generating or growth generating and not revenue generating or not growth generating can really be crucial. And the whole idea of one creeping into the other is a lot more common than you might even think. So if you're either not new at all to time tracking, or you're pretty productive already, and you just want to really optimize every moment, and that's why you're watching this, jump to, in your mind, kind of creating really detailed categories far beyond just the concept of revenue and growth generating or not revenue and growth generating. So one of the great things about doing this is that it really helps you figure out when to hire team members and then for what roles. So as you start tracking your time spent on each task, you might be really shocked, especially, again, if you consider yourself somebody who has a pretty streamlined system or process and you're not afraid to hire, maybe you already have several team members or employees. But this simple trick has helped even seven-figure business owners with many, many, many employees discover that they were spending their time on things that they really shouldn't be, right? But the problem is that as we grow as entrepreneurs and our roles change, we forget that we need to constantly reanalyze or reevaluate our time against the cost of a team member's time, which changes dramatically as we grow. So with that said, one of the primary reasons this happens, even to entrepreneurs who manage large teams, is because we are the ones who have developed an efficient way of doing that task. So it doesn't even cross our mind sometimes to outsource it. So if that's you, great. Write down that standard operating procedure that you've developed for that task, the most efficient way to get it done, and hire a team member. So that way, not only is that thing off your plate, you're paying for optimized time spent by that hourly team member. So remember, guys, if you're paying people by the hour, which is a lot of, that's a lot of the case, that person really has exactly zero motivation to be efficient. And that's not saying anything bad about that person. That's not a fault of theirs in any way. But the point is that it's just to say that they're automatically, that's the design of an hourly system, right? So you want to create an optimized system and then onboard that team or that team member onto it, right? So that they don't have to create it from scratch. That's not their responsibility. So make sure that you are tracking over a long enough period of time as well. You want to have enough of a data set. So, that means you've done that task under different conditions, different days, etc. So you have that reliable reliable data set. And then here's the other thing. If you want to make sure that you have a truly fully efficient day, you also need to track the time you waste. So that means those breaks that you think are really tiny, where you're just gonna check Facebook really quickly or your text messages, etc. They might feel inconsequential, but again, no matter the size of the company I'm hired to consult on, I almost undoubtedly find that people are wasting a multiple of the time they think they are. So that means double, triple, etc. So you might be saying to yourself, all right, this feels a little bit like one of those systems that takes more time to implement than the thing it's systematizing. So if that's you, I just want to give you a really easy step-by-step, all right? So write down the time you start working and then the time you stop working. So this is the time your brain and body will typically feel as how long you worked, okay? So use a timer like Toggle, Toggl, or some other online timer. That's a free one. You can use literally any timer. You can use your phone if you really want to, and a piece of paper. But if you want to do something that isn't work, like check Facebook, check Twitter, text messages. And if your team member or your employee did that, you would kind of prefer that they not do it on the clock, though we all know it does happen. But for you, for this experiment, you want to quote unquote clock out if you do that. So you want to be super, super, super aggressive. So, in other words, I'm pretty sure that you don't run around asking your team members to clock out to check their phone for 5 minutes, but you want to do that here. Okay, so you want to be that aggressive. And the reason is that a lot of times it isn't actually 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes 10 or 15 times a day. So that's an hour or more combined, and that doesn't even count the time it takes you in your brain to get back into a task and remind yourself where you were and get going again, right? Which is additional wasted time. So get ready and be ready to find out that you're only clocked in under these sort of guidelines and this aggressive guidelines. Be ready to find out that you're actually only clocked in for like half the day. I have regularly done this exercise with entrepreneurs who find they are clocked in for less than half the day. So when I did it in my first business, I was clocked in for 4 hours out of a 14-hour day. So between the first time I started, and said, okay, I'm starting work, and I said, okay, I don't have any more work today, I'm off work, that was 14 hours, and only 4 hours was I clocked in. So realize that if you find that you're clocked in nearly the whole day, you are not off the hook, okay? It actually really probably means that you need to get really detailed in your time use. So if you do find out that you were clocked in for very little time, it is time to start batching and taking longer breaks. So that might seem counterintuitive, like, wait, I should take more time off? What? But a 30-minute break totally away from your desk to go for a walk, check Facebook, call family members back, whatever it is often going to register as a true and real break in your brain and actually help your productivity. Whereas checking your phone for a couple minutes here and there, and then that adds up to that amount of time over the day, a lot of times it doesn't register at all as a break and only serves as a distraction. So when I did this experiment, I figured, okay, well, if I'm only working 4 hours anyway, let's see if I can just work 9 to 12, right? And take the day off. And guess what? It turns out I could, because those were my actual that's how much productive time I was getting done. And that was quite a bit nicer than that ridiculous 14-hour day that I was pulling. So if you find that you are clocked in most of the day, then it's likely that you're probably doing a lot of tasks that you should actually be hiring others for, or even possibly automating completely. So now it's time to actually start tracking in detail for as much of your day as you possibly can. So what this does is it really helps you find the culprit that's taking over huge chunks and start prioritizing, optimizing that thing or that aspect first. Might be email, might be taking calls, it might be making PowerPoint presentations, it might be customer service. So whatever it is, doing it this way is going to figure out, it's going to flag whatever that thing is, and you'll be able to go after the largest time suck first, okay? So really quickly to recap, time track regularly, especially when anything changes. If you're not flagging a change in anything yourself, then you still want to kind of do this on a regular basis to make sure that you're not missing anything. Think about, clocking in, clocking out, work versus not work, and get really detailed, okay? So you want to figure out, what are those time sucks? Another one that I figured out for me pretty early on was I was spending an embarrassing amount of time on bookkeeping. And it was just like, I'm not even good at it. Why on earth was I spending all of this ridiculous time? I would be like the most expensive bookkeeper on the face of the planet if I were paying my rate for the ridiculous number of hours that I was working. So, I hired a bookkeeper because I identified that time suck and onboarded a team member to do it, right? So a lot of times these little but just entering this really quick thing is not a big deal. But then when you actually start tracking it, it becomes that really big deal, okay? So I hope that makes sense. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, anything, just leave them in the comments right below and I'd be more than happy to help you out. Thanks, guys. Bye.